everybody, it's Sid from Cool Movie Gram, your source for everything about cool film. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button, check out my other videos, like my content, share my content, follow me on my socials, and those of you who've already done that, thank you very much and welcome back to the channel. Just back from work. Today is continuing the onslaught of my favourite 20 Jet Li films. Of course, this is the second part, covering films 15 to 11. So it's part 2 of 4. What can I say? As explained before, Jet Li for me is one of the titans of martial arts and kung fu cinema. He's an absolutely amazing actor, and at the same time he's just a very gifted natural martial artist who has made some just absolute classics of the genre, and some not loved as much as others, but of course I've pretty much watched everything that he's done, so I'm going to be going through, of course, his 20 of my favorite films of his in this series. And yeah, thank you very much for the response that I've had from everybody else, and I will be putting out some more content as well soon. So you know what, let's not waste any time and let's get to the meat of the matter. Number 15 is Bodyguard from Beijing, which is a 1994 film directed by Korean, which stars Jet Li with Christy Chung, Kent Cheng and Colin Chow. Now, a school teacher witnesses a murder. Her wealthy boyfriend arranges for a Beijing bodyguard because he has links to the Chinese government to protect her. During his mission, the two form a bond and a closeness. But a vengeful mercenary is out for blood. Can he protect her? Yeah, this was, of course, the first of his modern day films that he had done, which is pretty much veering into, I would say, the more heroic bloodshed kind of feel, because there is still martial arts in this at the end of the day, but it's light wire work, but then at the same time there's a lot of gunplay that's involved in this film. Now, I have reviewed this film before because of the I think there's the 88 films Blu-ray release, which was also released on 4K, an absolutely amazing transfer. Yeah, and this was I think it was moderately successful, not as big of a success, but this film yeah, it kind of showed Jet Li in a new light, because he's playing this kind of like very militaristic kind of person who's pretty much duty above all. And you see, it's just, I think the chemistry between him and Christy Chung was actually really good in this film, because it kind of showed this kind of like dynamic, because she's this very sassy, very loud, kind of like just a very expressive person who wants to just do what most young people would want to do at that time in their life, which is just to have fun, be able to spend time with their friends, and you know, just do shopping and all those kind of things. But he's like a total opposite. But of course, when one of like the best action sequences in the film takes place, which is like a shopping mall shootout, where you see Jet Li's bodyguard, who's actually, you know, saves Christy Chung, saves the young lady Michelle, and you see him kind of just, you know, expertly, just like a marksman, just pick off his opponents with like one-shot kills, which is done pretty well. A bit of I wouldn't say it's much like John Woo, but it's like very kind of, there's a lot of use of like slow-mo and some really good editing in that sequence. And yeah, of course, and I think the bad guy Colin Chow in this film was really good. Of course, Colin Chow, who is mostly known for appearing in films like The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions as Seraph, and he was also in Forbidden Kingdom with Jet Li as the Jade Emperor, I think it is. Yeah, he played the Jade Emperor, and or the Jade Warlord, was it? I can't remember, because I haven't seen that film for some time. And also he was the main bad guy in Donnie Yen movie Flashpoint, which of course he had one of like the best fight scenes that Donnie has done in his career, and he does really well. I loved like the his just his kind of like his scene when he kind of like is introduced to the actual audience, and how he kind of like gets his brother's body from the morgue, and that was actually pretty brutal. And also of course his end fight with Jet Li, which was done really well. It's quite interesting how they used kind of very light wire work, but then of course Colin Chow's kicking ability was pretty good, and as well as like the whole kind of use of like the environment around each other, like that was done pretty well. But for me, my favorite character in this film was probably I would say Ken Cheng, who plays this kind of worn down cop who's trying to do right, trying to kind of provide for his son's education, but of course he's got a lot of gambling debts and everything as well. But he's a defeated man with like a broken marriage and everything, and I thought that was picturized pretty well with a really kind of heartfelt performance from him, who kind of like, he also kind of strikes a friendship with Jet Li's character, which I thought was done pretty well. And of course, I mean, Korean, he knows how to tell a story when it comes to action filmmaking. He kind of, I've seen quite a few of his films where, although on the surface they are very action orientated, very kind of heavy on the fight choreography and the breakneck plot, but at the same time he does a lot to kind of humanize the characters within the actual within the stories. Like for example, like Yoon Byu's character in Righting Wrongs, whether it would be the Fong Sai-yuk movies or even in Bodyguard from Beijing, he kind of humanizes these characters. It even shows like a very sympathetic side, to like a somewhat of a justification for Colin Chow's anger in this film, why his resentment towards Jet Li's character, and his kind of like his motive for revenge. And but overall, I would say like this is like very kind of it was kind of underappreciated when it came out, and of course this was one of the final films that Jet Li had actually produced as under his Eastern Films banner. But I'm so glad now you were able to actually get this fully kind of like no bits missing, no new soundtrack or really kind of pathetic English dub. It was pretty much almost trapped by the Weinsteins in Dimension, and they released it as The Defender in around about the early 2000s. This is when Romeo Must Die came out, and Jet Li was kind of like becoming the next big sensation from Asia, who has actually kind of somehow forged a successful career in Hollywood. And so they put a bunch of his movies out, and I'm glad that 88 Films was able to release it, and I think Shout Factory has put this on one of their Jet Li box sets. You get both the English and the original Cantonese version, language version. But I would definitely recommend this film. I really enjoyed it, and kind of riffs from like The Bodyguard, I would say, the Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston movie. I mean, which of course screenwriter Gordon Chan has admitted that he did borrow a lot of elements from it because this is a movie that he really liked. Number 14 is Kung Fu Cult Master, which is a 1993 film directed by Wang Jing, which is starring Jet Li with Ching Mi Yao, Charlotte Chung, Sammo Hung, Colin Chow, and a host of others. Chen Moke loses his parents in childhood due to politics within the martial world. He is a sickly child due to an injury, and he is resented by the students at his school because he's favoured by their master, who's played by Sammo Hung. And when they attempt to kill him, pretty much, he ends up encounters a former kung fu expert who was actually an opponent of Sammo Hung's character at one point, who's kind of like a really kind of weird hermit who's kind of rolls on a rock and whatnot, and he ends up kind of passing his kung fu to Chung Mo-kei, who eventually is cured of his illness, and he kind of unlocks his potential, and he becomes this kind of like absolutely incredible martial artist with supernatural abilities. And he's joined by a woman who's known from the what they call the evil clan, the devil clan, who's kind of like a servant of, who's kind of bound to be his servant because of his, I think his mother, who comes from this cult. She joins him on his quest, which is to kind of stop this kind of rivalry, which has like many clans who are fighting for two legendary swords, which caused the problems in his life. Yeah, this was based on Jin Yong's novel Heavenly Sword and Dragon Saber, which has been covered by, I'm sure there's other adaptations in terms of like TV shows that have been running for long in Hong Kong and China, as well as there was two films called, or I think there's three films in general, called Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber, which were directed by Cho Yun, which is released by Shaw Brothers, and starring Derek Yee, and who's of course the younger half brother of David Chang, and who's also now probably has been one of the best filmmakers in Hong Kong. And this film itself, it was meant to have been a two-parter, but for some reason, because the film wasn't well received at the box office, and some people criticized it for its kind of like the plot being so kind of all over the place, bearing in mind this is a very long-running novel series, which they had so many chapters that were kind of skimmed over, and it kind of just focused on the Chung Mo-kei character. But it just kind of formed a kind of, some places it can be a bit choppy and a bit kind of like moving really fast and whatnot, especially for those who have actually read the original novel, as well as maybe being more familiar with the source material. But I think that overall this was like, visually this film was like, it's just insane. It was just such a hyperbolic movie because it kind of blends slight elements of like Wong Jing's kind of like toilet humor kind of thing, but at the same time you've got some really well choreographed wire fu sequences, which of course Sammo Hung was in charge of, and he had actually put together these fight sequences. And it was quite nice. You got like veterans, like of course you got Sammo Hung, and you even got Beardy, aka Lam Kai-yan, playing one of the bad guys, and then Charlotte Chung, who plays like appears as his mother, along with Francis Ng, who's playing his father. But then Charlotte Chung kind of then appears as another character, who's kind of like part of like a rather sinister clan that's trying to kind of control the whole situation, also get the legendary swords for themselves. But it's kind of like in the midst of this, there's a really good underdog story. I mean, you've got some extreme violence. I mean, especially you got one scene where one of the characters, who's like this Buddhist Shaolin nun, who kind of just goes underground and just starts chopping up all these people. You see body parts, dismembered body parts just coming out, and also it's like the wire work still actually the choreography is handled pretty well, and the use of the visual effects are pretty kind of like I would say they were done pretty well. Yeah, and even though this is kind of like was very underappreciated when it came out, the sequel didn't come out because of the lack of kind of success it saw at the box office initially. But over the time, I mean, a lot of people have seen this, and they're saying this is actually probably a standout film from Jet Li, and on rewatches, especially when you've kind of watched the Blu-ray from Eureka, I thought the film looked absolutely incredible. I mean, the cinematography was really well, the editing is done pretty good, and it's a fun movie. It's bizarre in some places because, bearing in mind, it's a kind of like a swordplay fantasy where characters do have magical abilities. There is a lot of flying around, but at the same time, it's such a fun movie to watch. It's just so entertaining, and the action is just plenty. There's just so much fight action from the get-go, and it's just the look of the aesthetics of the film, like the costumes and like even like just the locations. It's actually quite a beautiful film. Number 13 is Danny the Dog, aka Unleashed, a 2005 movie directed by Louis Leterrier. Stars Jet Li, Morgan Freeman, Bob Hoskins, and Kerry Condon. Now, a ruthless loan shark named Bart has raised Danny like a dog, using his vicious fighting skills to collect debt. And after a failed hit on Bart, an injured Danny escapes. He's taken in by a blind pianist, Sam. Together with Sam's stepdaughter, Victoria, the two teach Danny how to live as a person and kind of develop a more gentle and happier and more peaceful existence. But when Bart and his cronies learn of Danny's whereabouts, he is torn between two worlds, and he has to at least try to fight to protect those he cares about. Without a doubt, Unleashed, Danny the Dog, I would say, is probably one of like Jet Li's strongest performances, especially in a Western production. This was supposed to be set in Scotland, I believe, but then it just feels a lot like a Guy Ritchie's London. It's like the whole aesthetics of the film. The fact that you've also got people like Tamir Hassan, who is featured in many like kind of like Danny Dyer type kind of like flicks and these like Cockney geezer movies, and of course Bob Hoskins, legendary actor who's kind of featured in like a classic like The Long Good Friday. And it feels way too much. I mean, they've got these kind of like very posh London type of accents and Cockney accents all kind of mixed together, like some of the characters. And this is what I really loved about this film, because it just starts off like a very hyperbolic, slick kind of like, kind of stylish action kind of movie with loads of violence, like a gangland flick. But then all of a sudden, it's like when you see like the introduction of Sam, who's like kind of like repairing a piano, and how he kind of interacts with Jet Li's character, it kind of turns into almost like a very emotional drama. It's a very emotional film, and I loved Jet Li's performance in this film, because especially, for example, like the first scene where he's actually sitting at the dinner table, when he's at Sam's house, when he eventually first he's scared, he's like a dog who's kind of like hides under the bed, he doesn't want to he's worried about what's going on, but at the same time, he when he's sitting at the actual table, he just doesn't know how to eat, and they're trying to teach him, but then he kind of opens up, and you see him kind of like through, like, for example, his love for music and the piano and the reason behind it. When you learn, it's just like, it's quite a moving story, and it's like one man who's lived a completely kind of like just a very subhuman way to kind of like come out from the depths of all of this, and then all of a sudden becoming this very kind of just happy, much more distinguished person. Jet Li's character, the fact that he has this collar on, as soon as his collar's taken off, and he just becomes like a rabid dog, and even his fighting style, he's not like his usual kind of swift, controlled wushu techniques that you were used to seeing, like, for example, within films like, of course, when he's playing Wong Fei-hung, Fong Sai-yuk, or even the previous movie, Chung Mo-kei. He's more kind of like, he's like a rabid dog when he fights. He's very aggressive and brutal. And of course, he's got fights with, like, even Scott Adkins is involved, like the great underground kind of like when he's in an underground fighting ring, and that's really slick and stylish again. And even his fight with British martial artist Mike Lambert, especially at the end, the finale is just absolute, just chaotic and crazy. And also all thanks to Yuen Woo-ping, who kind of just directed these great fights. Now, one thing I would have to say is, I remember this is a conversation I had with British martial artist / actor filmmaker Nathan Gearing. This was a couple of about a week or two ago, when I went to London to see the screenings of Pedicab Driver and The Big Heat, with my friend Hassan, and we met Nathan Gearing there, and he was kind of sat down and he was saying how like we were kind of talking about it from Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Jet Li, whatever, everything was involved. And even he was saying how like Jet Li had actually really kind of appreciated working with Luc Besson. He's saying films like Kiss of the Dragon and Danny the Dog, because he felt like the French, in comparison to Hollywood, when he worked on films like Romeo Must Die, War, The One, and Cradle to the Grave, he seems that there was more attention to detail in terms of how the fights were choreographed. And like, for example, they were paying more homage to Jet Li and saying this is how the fight should be, and they had more of appreciation for the Hong Kong style of filmmaking, which Jet Li was pretty much known for. And it shows in this movie, and like the fights are shot absolutely brilliantly, but at the same time with kind of like the very human element of like the story, the drama is handled really well. And even though this film was not a success at the box office, but overall, I mean, upon like retrospective, even when it came out, even though it was a failure for me, I thought that this film was absolutely amazing. I loved watching it, and nearly everybody who I've actually recommended this film to, they really enjoyed it. They all said the same thing, that this is actually such a moving, wonderful film. Great characters, great performances. The cinematography is really well, but at the same time it blends the drama with the action in such a great way. I think it was Morgan Freeman who even referred to this movie as kind of like a fantasy, because yeah, it is a fantasy. No, nothing like this is actually realistic, but it's just one of those, it just draws you in. And this kind of like alternate reality world of like a very kind of violent, what's meant to be, I don't know if it's Glasgow or Edinburgh, which kind of seems a lot like London. This version of the world kind of exists, but overall it's just such a great movie, and definitely I would say his best of his English language films, without a doubt. Number 12 is Fong Sai-yuk 2, which is a 1993 film directed by Corey Yuen again, which stars Jet Li with Michelle Race, Amy Kwok, Josephine Xiao, Corey Yuen, and Adam Cheng. Now, Fong Sai-yuk is taken under the wing of Chen Kar-lok, who's like the leader of the Red Flower Society, which is an anti-Qing government group, which his father was also a part of. He is given a mission to retrieve a secret document which is held by a Qing governor. He does so by trying to woo the official's daughter. This actually doesn't sit well with his wife Ting Ting and of course Sai-yuk's own mother. Whilst an ambitious member of the society is actually plotting to take over and kill anyone in his way, including Sai-yuk. Yeah, I did a review of both of these films in for the 88 films release of the two, of the box set that they did, which is out in 4K and Blu-ray, and yeah, a great sequel, a really great sequel. Not quite on the same level as the original. I think the original was just a much superior film, but this sequel has some great moments. Some really good moments. I mean, Jet Li, again, he has this kind of cheeky grin, considering that this was like a kung fu comedy in comparison to the stark seriousness of like the Once Upon a Time in China movies, and his character was like the stern kind of authoritarian martial arts kung fu leader and physician, Wong Fei-hung, but he's like more the carefree and the flamboyant and the rather kind of like the cheeky type of personality, which is Fong Sai-yuk. From the get-go, although of course it does not have like the detail of like An Hui's art direction in the original, but this one again, it still looks amazing. Such a great visual movie in terms of like the set pieces, especially like the first action sequence where you got this kind of like this dragon with like fireworks and everything, like the way that it's kind of displayed, and the fight sequence that breaks out, it's just very visceral, very well kind of like it's well captured. and it kind of plays with like Jet Li's humorous side to it. And of course, Corey Yin's small role in this film has a lot of kind of humor involved within his kind of like within the character that he plays, and is kind of like a funny subplot. And of course, the bad guy, I keep forgetting his name, who's like the one without any eyebrows. He's just absolutely just very ruthless in this film. Yeah, he was a bad guy in like quite a few Jet Li films, which was like his first three like Shaolin Temple movies, New Legend of Shaolin, and this one. And again, a very, very competent martial artist. I think that guy's passed away, but he's a very good martial artist. But at the same time, it's just done like with such great kind of Korean, just handles it so well. Again, even like his interactions with Jet Li, really good. Adam Cheng, he doesn't get a lot to do in this film, considering that he's like a very iconic kind of actor who's pretty much well known within Hong Kong for playing these kind of like heroic characters in like sword playing movies and TV shows. He has a very kind of smallish kind of role, but a very kind of pivotal, important character within the whole story and the mythological lore around Fong Sai-yuk and also the Red Flower Society. The whole kind of setup of like the when he has to go and try to kind of like ask for the governor's daughter's marriage, hand in marriage, that was done pretty well. I mean, his chemistry, both with Amy Kwok as well as Michelle Reyes, who was also in the first movie as Ting Ting. Their chemistry is really kind of convincing in this film, and it kind of creates this whole kind of, just a very kind of silly working class kind of drama where it's like almost like a sitcom where he's kind of torn between these two women. And of course, you got his mother, Josephine Xiao, playing the mother. Was an absolute scene stealer in the first movie, and also she does get quite a fair bit of like scenes and sequences where she's able to kind of express, just show her comedic abilities. She lights the screen up on fire, and but when it comes to like the way that some of these fight sequences are designed, especially like the kind of altar where he has to actually have this kind of competition with these other to be potential suitors, that was done pretty well in terms of the way that was shot and the way that it's set, as well as of course the scene that everyone talks about, which is when Sai-yuk is actually blindfolded and he just doesn't want to see any of his brothers in arms dying, so he has like just all these kind of Japanese katanas and everything, and he's just kind of slicing them through. I just thought that was such a great fight, considering that this film is very heavily of the part of the wire fu craze, but there wasn't much wire fu in terms of like the sequences shot in that scene itself. That was done pretty. It was just so badass. The music, the cinematography, and it's just the choreography. It's just done so well edited and everything as well. And of course, it is again. Upon repeat viewings, you do appreciate this more, especially in its original language, because when it comes to the like the American language version, which kind of felt a bit condensed, and it's just when they change these music scores in a lot of these films, it just takes away the atmosphere, and especially with these new kind of like these new sound effects, it just takes away the rhythm of the fight scenes. And I'm just so glad that having getting to watch this again in its original language. I remember the first time seeing this on Channel 4 when both Fong Sai-yuk movies were played like really late at night, taping them off Channel 4 on VHS. Rewatched these so many times, and even my mom was familiar with these movies, and she says, "Oh, you love these movies, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Number 11 is Martial Arts of Shaolin, which is a 1986 film directed by Lau Ka-leung, which stars Jet Li with Hong Chin-yan, Hu Zhenchuan, Hai Yu, and Yu Cheng-hui. Ziming is a northern Shaolin monk who defies temple rules and plans to kill the corrupt magistrate He Sao, the man who is responsible for his parents' death. He meets Chao Wei and Sima Yan, two southern Shaolin layman students who are also after revenge against He Sao. as they continue their journey, they bond, they argue, they bond, and Zimin also learns of a special bond that he has with Sima Yan. Yeah, this was, of course, the only time that Jet Li had actually worked with the legendary Lau Kar Leung, and of course, this was the last time that he appeared on screen in a film with his former wife, Hong Chin-yan. Yeah, of course, this again, it was produced by the same company and same people who were responsible for the first two movies that he did, which was Shaolin Temple and Kids from Shaolin. And of course, this time around, they got Lau Kar Leung involved, as well as the fact is that Shaw Brothers actually had the distribution rights for this movie. And although, overall, even though there was a lot of drama involved in this film, apparently Jet Li and Lau Kar Leung, there were plans to actually make this movie, and also there was another one which was the Red Lotus Temple, which of course the story of it was covered by Ringo Lam in Burning Paradise. Absolutely amazing film, by the way. But that didn't happen simply because of the fact that Jet Li had a falling out with Lau Kar Leung. A lot of the extras on martial arts in Shaolin, they were actually getting paid more than he was because they were protected by the Hong Kong Union and everything as well. So they actually got union payments, and he kind of felt, wait a minute, I'm the star of this movie, why am I getting paid so low? Lau Kar Leung had actually kind of like came out and said, oh yeah, these Chinese wushu practitioners, they're all technique and no power. They're not real martial artists, and there was a lot of kind of like back and forth between the two. But still, the film is filled with just a lot of great humor involved, as well as you get a funny Jet Li in drag scene, and the fight choreography very detailed. Even like the use of like the kung fu techniques shown in this film, so kind of like very specific, very kind of well detailed. You have a great kind of scene which is inspired, I would say, very reminds you of Dragon Lord, where you see like two teams of like Shaolin monks kind of like doing this calligraphy contest, which mixed in with kung fu, which was very fun and very creative, with a really kind of funny ending. And of course, you got like lion dance techniques and everything. It just shows very kind of different things of like Chinese culture all thrown together, especially like the parades and like the cinematography, again using the sets in this film and the locations, because it was shot in mainland China, looking absolutely amazing. Very stunning film. And you get to see the distinct differences between like northern style martial arts of China as well as like southern Shaolin styles. And again, mainly because all of the cast involved were all former wushu experts. Well, they're all wushu experts, with some of them being champions like Jet Li. And you get to see their abilities on display. Again, just like the first two Shaolin Temple films, this was done without any kind of wire work, any kind of like special effects and whatnot. This was all pretty much their own abilities on display, which looks absolutely amazing. The fact that you got these long takes, wide shots, and you just see like the kind of like the effort that was put into the choreography. It just looks absolutely stunning. His chemistry with Hong Chin-yan, his former wife, is absolutely really kind of like well played. It has this very innocent feel to it. And of course you got Hai-Yu, he's the head martial arts instructor in the temple, almost very similar to his character from like the first Shaolin Temple. Of course, this is nothing to do with either of the Shaolin Temple movies. This is a very different film, very kind of like different story, different characters, but the fact that they took it back to, instead of being set like on a different kind of story, they kind of took it back to the Shaolin Temple. And that kind of, the appeal of this film appears really well. Again, the use of the costumes, the locations, everything about this film is just so like, I think Tony Raines, because this film is on this set over here, which is Shaw Scott Volume 2, and yeah, I think Tony Rayns in his interview saying, "Oh yeah, it's a very," he was talking bad about the film. I'm like, are you sure this is the same film? Because I was thinking, wait a minute, I mean, I actually really enjoyed this movie. Is it really that bad? And when I rewatched it, I mean, I watched it, I think it was on Netflix many years ago, with a bunch of Shaw Brothers titles that Celestial owns, and this was one of them. I watched it on there, I enjoyed it. And when I had the, when I bought the box set for Shawscope, I watched it then, and I still enjoyed it. I thought it was actually a really good film. And I would say definitely it was kind of on rewatch values. It's so fast moving, it's so entertaining, and it's just such a blast to watch. I mean, you don't take it seriously. It's like, yeah, it's just a kung fu movie about like the Shaolin temples, kind of a kung fu comedy with light-hearted humor, and at the same time just some really kind of like great, just ass-kicking action all the way through, and like just really good kind of like emphasis on like the kind of training that they do. And yeah, definitely I would say kind of goes under the radar. But of course, this was, at the time when it came out, this was a huge hit in mainland China. This was such a big hit there. It did a moderate business in Hong Kong, but maybe due to the fact that it was released at a time where we're in 1986. Of course, this film was at the time when Hong Kong cinema itself kind of had progressed from traditional martial arts films. They were more focusing on like modern day action movies. Of course, that was the year where Jackie Chan, of course, had films like I think prior to that he'd done Armor of God. He'd done like prior to that, you know, the Police Story. He had the Lucky Stars movies. Sammo Hung coming out with Millionaires Express, and of course John Woo with A Better Tomorrow, which kind of like changed like the landscape of Hong Kong action films. So maybe because this was released at a bit of a long time, they maybe thought it was, yeah, you know, we've seen it all before, but maybe that's why it wasn't that big of a hit in Hong Kong. But when, upon revisiting it, say, this is actually one of the more finer martial arts movies that were produced in the 80s, definitely at that period of time, in the 80s, which was the mid-late section. Yeah, thank you very much if you've lasted this long. Again, subscribe and share this video. Let me know what you think, and yeah, I mean, what do you think of my picks so far, and are they in the same ranking as yourself? I would love to know more. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.